Hey guys, it's Katie here with Life the Mundane. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit more serious than what we typically discuss on this channel, but I do think it's important and I do think it falls into line with the homeschooling, home management, parenting, because we're going to talk about anxiety and depression. Guys, this is a real thing and it affects all three areas and more in your life if it is something that you struggle with. So today I'm going to be sharing my personal journey with it, what my experience has been, what are some of the things that I've learned through this process, and then I'm going to be doing another video in this series on some strategies that I've used to combat this or to cope with these issues. So I hope you guys will subscribe to my channel and stick around. So let's get started. Before I jump in, I do have to give the disclaimer that I am not a medical professional and I am not seeking to give any medical advice whatsoever. Please do not discount seeing your doctors, talking to them about what is right for you in your case. But I do want to share my journey with this. I have honestly, guys, been sitting on this video topic for almost a year now. I've wanted to do this video because I feel like people don't talk about especially homeschooling with anxiety and depression, but just in depression and anxiety in general. I don't feel like a lot of people talk about it. And I also, which you guys will hear about here in a second, I show very different symptoms than most people typically think of. And so I really, really felt like the Lord was calling me to share my story, but it's very scary. It's very raw. It's very personal. It is sometimes embarrassing or hard to talk about. Some of the times that were really, really hard and difficult for me and for my family. But I want to be honest with you guys. I want to be able to encourage you that are going through this, that you are not alone. And so the good of sharing way outweighs the bad. So let's jump into kind of what my story is. I actually struggled with postpartum depression 3 out of my 6 pregnancies. And it was very hard. I actually didn't catch it the first time around. I didn't realize that that's what it was. It wasn't until looking back after my diagnoses in later pregnancies that I realized that that was what was going on. And so I do want to say that especially if you're a first-time mom, I highly recommend you research about what it actually looks like. There are some really good articles and I'm going to drop them down below in the description for you guys that I would just recommend looking into to really truly understand the topic. And if you have a friend or a family member who is going through a first pregnancy, maybe have those conversations with them. If you notice some of those signs and symptoms, do it very gently and carefully. And if you are a first-time mama, be open to hearing it because I promise it'll help. I really wish I would have sought help. Had I noticed this with my first pregnancy, I think it would have made things a lot more enjoyable. Like, I didn't feel intense sadness like in the commercials. I didn't have the cloud hanging over my head. I didn't feel a sense of anger or self-harm or wanting to harm my child or not wanting to care for my child. That was not at all what I was experiencing, and that's kind of what I had in my mind that depression was. And it was honestly a very, very mild case of postpartum depression after my first. But in later pregnancies, it became more severe. And I've been very thankful that most of my depression, for the most part, has been confined within postpartum categories. So it has gone away after a period of time. Anxiety has been a totally different story. I was not an anxious child. I did not grow up with anxiety. I have some kiddos that struggle with it already, and that's hard for me. I'm worried, but I know that God is good and it is just an opportunity for Him to show them how much they need Him and how much He's going to come through for them. So I'm also excited about the opportunity. But for me, anxiety was not something I struggled with. I was a very confident kid and very sure of the decisions that I made. So I've always been a very decisive person. So going into this world of anxiety was really, really, really different and kind of scary for me. But basically with my 4th pregnancy, that was my pregnancy with my daughter who has special needs and medical needs. And we were in the hospital a lot. She's had a lot of surgeries and all of those things. I love her to death. There is nothing about her that I would change at all. And I want to be very, very clear about that. that I am so thankful for her every single day. But about 6 months after she was born, I fell into anxiety, and it was very severe. It was to the point where I was having severe panic attacks daily, where I was being taken to the hospital and having tests run to see if I was having a heart attack at the age of 22. They were trying to figure out what was wrong with me because there was obviously something wrong. And it came down that it was anxiety and panic attacks. That has been something that has not 100% left me in the 7-8 years that she has been alive. It goes away for a period of time, but then sometimes it'll rear its ugly head, and I'll talk about that more when I share some of the strategies that I use. I have actually been able to track it, and there are certain seasons or times of years that are harder, and triggers that I have specifically with it now, but it is something that I still struggle with. But I've been very thankful to be able to find the right balance of strategies to combat this, along with spiritual growth and along with medication, to be able to balance that out and be able to make it where I'm very functional. It doesn't have to affect my day-to-day if I am doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. So anyways, it's been a battle, and so I can relate to those who have been there, but I want you to know that my symptoms were not textbook, like I mentioned. I was still a happy person. I was still outgoing. I was still me. And I actually had a person approach me one time that told me that I should stop telling people that I had anxiety and depression because it wasn't possible. I was too happy, and that's not a symptom of depression and anxiety. And that by saying that I had that, I was giving a false impression of what that is. And that's not true. I saw many doctors. I had many tests run. This is definitely what it was. And you can still feel happy and be happy, genuinely, guys, with depression and anxiety. My symptoms, again, everybody's are different, but mine had more to do with withdrawing. I am a huge extrovert by nature, but I found myself not wanting to be out with people as much, wanting to stay more homebound. I found myself actually going out because I had a lot of commitments, and I even sometimes would look forward to it. But then when I got there, I would stay in the corner or kind of just staying with one or two people that I felt really close with instead of mingling among masses. And I'm very introverted type behavior, which is not wrong in and of itself, but was definitely out of character for me. Another symptom of anxiety, like when my anxiety flares really bad, the first thing I can tell that my anxiety is back is going into the grocery store is one of the most overwhelming things that I do when I have anxiety. I would walk into the grocery store to go purchase cereal, let's say. And I always go in, I always buy off-brand. I have certain cereals I buy. I mean, it's not a complicated decision. And I would almost have a panic attack. Sometimes I would have a panic attack just thinking about like, okay, should I get the family size bag of the off-brand or the smaller bag of the off-brand, or oh wait, there's a coupon for save so much money off of the name brand. And I would start trying to calculate ounces and prices and do all of this kind of unnecessary math. And I would call my husband, and this has happened multiple times, guys, over cereal, but over other things as well in the grocery store, where I would call him like almost in tears saying, I don't know what I should do. I don't know what the right decision is and everything. And he would tell me, Katie, it's cereal, just pick one. Like, it's a few cents either way, just pick one. It's fine. And I physically could not make myself do it. Can kind of get somewhat OCD. I don't have OCD, but I can get a little like fixated on one thing and get very, very, very particular about it and can't let it go. I also struggle with decision making. So if you guys have seen my video on my meal plan or on many of the other systems that I use around my house, you'll notice that the first thing I try to do with my systems, I have to get rid of the decisions. If I have to make 50 million decisions a day, it will break me down mentally. And so I make things on autopilot as much as possible, and I try to take the decision making out of anything that's unnecessary so my brain can be sharp and ready and fully present for the decisions that actually matter. So that gives you a little insight into me and why some of my videos are the way they are, if you thought it was crazy before. But anyways, it presents itself differently, and it's presented itself differently different pregnancies and different times. There have been times where I haven't been able to get out of bed, and there have been times when people would point out how I was struggling in motherhood, and not necessarily in a loving, heartfelt, caring way, but more of a criticism or things like that, and where they would confront me and they would say, we really feel like you're not being a good mom. And that would spiral me really badly. It would put me to the point where I was constantly letting that lie in that Satan had planted there. And it was from Satan, 100%. But I would let that lie sneak in that you're not a good mom and you're failing in every area. And I would let that play in my head on repeat over and over and over again. And guess what, guys? I wasn't a bad mom prior to this. I was struggling with something and I needed help, but I wasn't a bad mom. But when I allowed that lie to sit in my head and I meditated on that lie day and night, I became a bad mom. I couldn't get myself out of bed and I couldn't care for them. I needed outside help. I needed to get on medication. I needed my husband's help. He pulled a lot of weight. If you guys want to hear kind of his perspective on how can a husband be supportive, he has learned so many things. He is amazing with anxiety and depression now. He's a pro. But if you want to hear more about his perspective on it and maybe some tips from him, let me know down in the comments and I can maybe do a video with him. But by staying on that thought for so long, it kind of became my reality for a period of time. And I'm very thankful it was a short period of time. I'm very thankful that God in his grace and mercy provided people who could step up and help me care for my kids and help do that. But it was hard for me. It was hard for me to swallow the fact that I got in my head so much that what I was afraid of the most became true. I am not struggling with depression. Like I said, that was something that was postpartum and is over. And I'm very thankful for that. But I want you to know that if you are struggling with postpartum depression, regular depression, anxiety, whatever it is, that God is there for you. And there were a lot of people when I was struggling with it the first time where I came and I said, I feel like spiritually there's something wrong. I feel like I need to grow. I feel like I'm not trusting God. And I feel like a lot of people discounted it and said, no, it's biological. It's biological. And then I would talk to other people about how I had started to take medication or realize my diagnosis. And they would say, no, it's spiritual. It's a spiritual battle. So I struggled a lot with trying to justify or figure out which side of it was really what was going on. But in reality, it is almost always both. And a lot of times you have to get the physical aspect, the biological aspect under control so that you can even begin to deal with the spiritual. But if you go about it attacking only the spiritual and there are biological issues, there are hormones, especially with postpartum depression, things like that, or with anxiety, I couldn't get my panic attacks to stop. It got to the point where it was multiple times a day and I couldn't get that to be under control enough for me able to dive in deeper spiritually. So I had to get that under control just so I could mentally be clear enough to really truly understand the truth that I needed to understand from God's word. On the flip side, if you take medication or you do some of these system and strategies I'm going to share about in my next video, and you do those things, well, they can help you and they can make you look better on the outside and maybe even feel a little bit better. But ultimately, they will leave you feeling very empty. And there will be a lot that is the heart issue that's not really truly dealt with. There is a sense when we are struggling with anxiety or depression of not being able to trust God, or to fear mistakes you've made in the past, or fear things that are coming in the future. And there needs to be a resting in Christ. And so I would really encourage you to take it as a twofold equal aspect. And you might have to put one in place before you can look at the other, but don't stop short of examining both sides of this piece, guys. I just would really encourage you in that. If you're not sure how to go about doing that, please reach out to me. One of the other symptoms that I struggled with that I didn't realize is actually a very common, but again, not as much talked about, was sudden bursts of anger. Not an angry person, but then I would just get into moments or headspaces of just an explosion of anger over nothing. Now, there was no physical, emotional, verbal abuse at all. I'm not talking about that level of anger. If that is what's going on, please seek help right away. We always want to be careful with others, and I'm not saying it didn't affect my kids either, though. We can speak in anger to our children without it being that serious, but we still have to understand that it's not right, and it's not the way that God intended things to be. And I would just get angry. I would let everything get under my skin. And sometimes I wouldn't explode in anger, but sometimes I would have that just intense feeling and keep it bottled up inside, which was also very unhealthy for myself. So, but I didn't realize that was actually a big sign, especially if that's out of character for you. That is a sign of depression and anxiety. I will include a list down below of a more extensive list of the symptoms of depression and anxiety for you guys to check out. I would encourage you to check it out, even if it's not something you're struggling with now, because you may have a friend or a family member who's struggling with it. You may also eventually struggle with it. And oftentimes when you're in that moment, you're not in a position to be able to really handle looking at it from a logistical, from a reasonable point. It's hard to step back in the moment and see what's going on. Oftentimes people don't see it until it gets to a more extreme, or till they're outside of the situation, or till someone else brings it to their attention. And I've been in all of those situations. I would say that by the grace of God, because I have been in and out of it so often, I've learned. I have made an effort to talk to my husband about it, to talk through it before, during, and after each episode and incident. And we've learned from one another what helps. I wanted to stay in bed all day when I struggle with postpartum depression. I did not want to get up. And I would just say, but I'm so tired. I've been up with the baby. I want to go back to bed. And he would say, okay, that's fine. You go back to bed. You rest. And in reality, what I needed in that moment, not that this is what everybody needs, but what I needed in that moment is I needed to get up and I needed to go work out or be physically active or get out of the house. I needed to get dressed. I needed to shower, and we'll talk about all that later. But I needed to get my body up and going, because laying in bed was just feeding that lie and was just feeding that desire to just, be back in my shell. And so, but he didn't know that. He was trying to be a sweet, amazing husband. We were newly married. We had a new baby. He didn't want to be the one to tell me to get up and get out of bed. And if he had said it like that, that would not have gone over well. So don't hear me saying that that's how you should handle it. But I think that by talking about it outside of it and not just pretending like it didn't happen, we were able to prepare for the times that it would happen again. And each time is even better. And so even now when I struggle with anxiety, it's something we've talked about so much. And we've talked through all the scenarios that he knows how to respond. He knows what's truly helpful to me and my symptoms and my needs, that we are able in the moment to step back a lot of times and go, wait, this is the anxiety talking, or wait, you need X, Y, and Z. And so I would just encourage you that if it's something you're struggling with, talk about it. It's scary, I know. It can be embarrassing. It can be hard. But it's important. It's important to talk with somebody you trust, whether that be your spouse, a friend, your pastor, someone in your church. Be willing to reach out and ask for help and talk about it and try and figure out your triggers and your symptoms so that you guys can make a plan that works for you. That's where I'm going to end it today. There is so much more that I could say on this topic, guys, and I wish I had a little bit longer to do that. But I do want to share, my next video is going to be all about what are some of the strategies, how did we come up with a plan on how to how to work on this and how to get better with it. And so I'm going to share all that with you guys in my next video. So please be sure to subscribe, click the little bell notification so you'll be notified when that new video comes out. And let me know if you would like to see a video with my husband, and if so, what questions you guys would have for him on dealing with a wife that has, or a spouse that has, depression and anxiety. So we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.